experimentation, which is the lean startup methodology. How many of you are familiar with the lean startup methodology? Right? A few of you. So it's rapid iteration of your processes. This fourth one is fascinating, autonomy. Our current way of managing businesses is top-down, hierarchical, siloed matrix structures in our organizational and our companies. In this autonomous world, they've decentralized the organization. Anybody familiar with Valve software? Valve is a software company out of Seattle, about 500 people. No CEO, no job descriptions, no management meetings, no middle management layers of any kind. They literally operate like a beehive. So if I spot a bug in the software, I grab the 3 people that I think can solve the bug. We go fix it and we disband. Everybody chooses what to do by themselves. There's no coordination. There's no central organization. Okay? They get more revenue per employee than Microsoft doing this. And if you think it's that for a cute Silicon Valley company, this is, there's a Chinese company, this is a Canadian bank, ING Direct in Canada. A regulated bank operates in this way with no CEO, no reporting lines, no job descriptions, etc. Because what we found is the most valuable communication patterns in companies is horizontal communication patterns rather than vertical. And when we can enable that with technology, then interesting things happen. What we found is if you implement 4 out of these 10 characteristics, you get the 10 times performance improvement. Not everybody does all of them. But if you implement 4 out of the 10, you get the 10x performance improvement. Okay? And you can actually take a survey if you want to go to this link, and you can actually take it for yourself, score your own organization. It's about 20 questions, takes about 15 minutes to take, and you can score your own organization. This is from the epilogue of the book. This is the market cap of the most exponential organizations, and this is from when I started writing the book to when I finished writing the book. And look at the change in the market cap in 10 quarters. Right? Quite unbelievable. Uber and Airbnb have all doubled since then. And the core economic basis of these new organizations came out about 3/4 of the way through the book. Here's the fundamental premise of these new exponential organizations. When you're running a business, you worry about managing cost of supply and cost of demand, right? And you optimize around both sides. You want to minimize cost of demand and cost of supply. The internet, for the first time ever, allowed us to drop the cost of demand exponentially. Online marketing, referral marketing. If you get a viral loop, your acquisition costs go totally to 0. And that was the first time in business you could acquire customers for no cost. These new exponential organizations have figured out how do you drop the cost of supply exponentially. Okay? So Airbnb, the marginal cost of adding a room to their inventory is almost 0. If you're Hyatt, you have to build a whole hotel. Same with Uber. Waze, when you join Waze, your demand and your supply. When you can drop your cost of supply, you take out the denominator and your market cap explodes. And that's why these companies are doing so well. Now the big question is, if you're a legacy industry and you have startups entering your business with no cost of supply, what will you do? It's an existential threat, right? You have to figure that out. And now this doesn't hit all industries equally. There are some, our world used to look like this. Some industries are very physical. Construction, mining, oil and gas, and they'll be slower to be disrupted because they're not as information-based, okay? Then there's products that are physical, like your iPhone or your Kindle, but all the revenue streams are digital, and then you have information-only businesses. But the world used to look like this, and now it's looking like this. More and more is being digitized. I mentioned healthcare, now digital. Energy, digital. Right? And I'll give you a couple more examples. 3 months ago, we went on CNBC and we announced a ranking of the Fortune 100 ranked by their scalability of their organization. So this is the Fortune 100 ranked by their scalability. At the top, very digital companies and technology companies. At the bottom, lots of energy companies, which makes sense. If you're shipping oil, you're doing the same thing over and over again. You don't need a lot of variability in your org structure. But as solar energy is coming along, you better figure it out, right? And we found we did a partnership with Hult Business Schools, and we found that there's a correlation between your stock market performance and the flexibility of your organization, which makes sense. As the external world becomes more volatile, your ability to adapt will drive market performance, right? Now, advice to large companies, The back half of the book is what do you do if you're an existing company? And I want to touch on two. The first is update your leadership that this is a new world. If your leadership is not aware that we're entering this fundamental new world, and your board, right? Not just your leadership, but your board. We've been talking a lot with BMW, for example. BMW, their tagline is, we're the ultimate driving machine, right? We're like, nobody's going to be driving. That's a big tension to navigate, right, if you're BMW. Now the CEO, the C-suite have come, we've spent time with them, they understand it. Now the board needs to give them permission to do something radical. And here's how bad it gets. This is a survey of bank executives asking, how aware are you of the startups? Look at Lending Club. Lending Club is a multi-billion-dollar public company, and 45% of bank executives did not know that it existed. That's criminal negligence. You have no business deciding strategy for your organization if you do not know that this is happening, right? No capability at all. So awareness is one. The second, and the most important, is it's very hard to take an existing organization and turn it into one of these exponential organizations. It's too hard to do. Don't do that. These big business transformation projects are very expensive. They take a long time. They're very political. They cost a lot of money. What you can do is leave the existing organization and then take your disruptive change agents to the edge and have them build one of these off the edge. Larry Page from Google came to me 3 years ago and said, hey, your organization at Yahoo is pretty cool. Should I do that at Google? And my answer was no, because you'll have the same immune system problem. But do something like it, point outwards. And you've seen the result with Google X, where they take new technologies, the Google car, Google Glass, contact lenses, and they point away from the mothership. The master of doing this is Apple. Apple has built the most successful company in the history of the world. They have a great design team, yeah, and they have a great technology supply chain, but their real innovation is an organizational innovation. What Apple does, unlike anybody in the world, is they take a small team that's very disruptive, they take them to the edge of the organization, they keep it totally stealth, and they say, go attack another industry, right? So they started with music, and then phones, and then tablets, and now music, healthcare, watches, payments, cars. There's no limit to their market cap. They can keep knocking over industry after industry. And as we enter a world where either you're the disruptor or you're the disrupted, we think other large organizations will have to react. And if you think about the insights you have on adjacent industries, it's quite profound. So take some of your disruptive change agents, move them to the edge, and have them disrupt adjacent industries. Okay? Big companies are doing some interesting things. They're not sitting around. I'll touch on one, which is Amazon. Amazon has recognized that it's very easy in a big company to say no to an idea, right? In any of your organizations, if there's an idea, 1 of 50 people can say no, it kills the idea. So Amazon has a policy that they call the institutional yes. So if you come to me inside Amazon with an idea, my default answer has to be yes. If I want to say no, I have to write a 2-page thesis as to why it's a bad idea and post it publicly. So they've created friction and embarrassment to saying no, meaning that many more ideas get tried out, tested, run all the way through. One of the results was Amazon Web Services. Literally nobody knew how to say no to this, had nothing to do with their core business, and now it's one of the most successful products of all time. Okay? Because this pace of change is not slowing down. If this was an exponential curve, it would actually be linear. This is a logarithmic y-axis. The end point on this chart is actually 18 million times higher than the starting point. So in reality, it's almost a vertical line. And so this pace of change continues to accelerate. We had 1 billion people online in 2010. Okay? We have almost 3 billion people now online. By the end of this decade, 6 billion people will be online. Okay? The biggest marketplace in the history of humanity is being created right now. The biggest marketplace in the history of humanity is being created right now. And they're all going to have one of these. This is the latest DataWind Android tablet. This is a 1 gig Android tablet, Bluetooth camera, Wi-Fi, and it's a phone. The manufacturing cost of this is $10. This costs $10 to make, and it's dropping in price 50% a year. By 2020, we'll be giving these out in cereal boxes because we'll be able to sell anything to the 6 billion people if they don't have one of those, right? So everybody in the world will have one within 5 years. And they're all going to be online. How many of you are familiar with the Google Loon project? Okay, so Google is launching high-altitude weather balloons to deliver broadband internet access anywhere in the world. Okay? When they started this 3 years ago, there were two buckets of people that said, this is crazy, it will never work. One was the balloon experts, who said, look, a weather balloon goes up, the material freezes, cracks appear, it comes down. No weather balloon stays up for more than about 3 weeks. You're crazy to try this, we're balloon experts, it's what we do. The second were the telcos, who said, you can't deliver broadband from that high. The power requirements are too high, the equipment will be too heavy. Today, the balloons are staying up for 200 days at a time, and they're delivering 40 megabits a second straight down to the ground today. Sri Lanka has contracted with them to deliver broadband across the country. Yesterday, they announced a deal with Indonesia to deliver broadband across Indonesia. So by the 2020, 6 billion people will be online with broadband. Completely will change the world. All will have access to education, healthcare, digital. And I've talked about energy being digital, and I've talked about healthcare becoming digital. Let me talk about this now, food. How many of you are familiar with Soylent? Show of hands, a couple of you. Okay, so Rob Reinhardt is a software developer in New York City. He gets annoyed that he has to stop writing software to go eat lunch. Right? Typical developer mentality, as you can see. When he goes to eat, he eats bad food. So he asks, why can't I just buy a milkshake that gives me a whole meal in a glass? And it turns out that doesn't exist. He spends 4 months with nutritionists and biochemists, and he comes up with Soylent. And this recipe gives you 100% of the carbs, fats, nutrients, vitamins, minerals you need as a human being for a day. You can drink this and not actually take in anything else. People have now lived on this for 6 months without actually taking anything else in. They've lost a lot of weight. They're way healthier because they're getting exactly what they need. They're totally bored, right? Because if you do this for 6 months, you're going to be bored out of your mind. But most of us don't eat because we have to. It's there. It's socially acceptable. I could drink a glass of this in the morning and eat whatever I wanted after that. Now, one really interesting thing is that this younger generation is different. If you are 40 years old or over, your initial instinct when you come up with this is to patent that recipe and then license it out to food companies to make money. That's how most of us would think about this, right? He's different. He open sourced his recipe. Anybody can go make this. There are already more than 2,000 variants on his original recipe. Because he said, look, if there's an earthquake or a hurricane hitting Mexico, I want people to just drop boxes of this in and solve the hunger problem. The most interesting thing for me is he's running this like a software company. He just released version 1.4. Food is now software. Okay? In fact, version 2.0 just came out. Food is now software. By the way, if you find version 1.3 on sale, it had a bug in it. It caused a lot of gas. So if you find version 1.3, you might want to stay away from it. Okay, so now food is now digital. And we're going to see the same iteration that we've seen in this. Let me end with this. How many of you have tried the Oculus Rift? Can I show? Okay, a few of you. How many of you heard? Do you know what the Oculus Rift is? It's essentially an iPhone in a scuba mask taped to your head, basically. So if you change your perspective, the perspective changes. This is a guy trying the Oculus Rift for the first time. This is his left eye and right eye, and he's about to go over a virtual roller coaster. So I want you to watch his reaction as he tries this for the first time. Oh, by the way, this is a very experienced gamer. Okay, he plays World of Warcraft and Doom, etc. all the time. Watch his reaction as he goes over the thing. Can I get some volume for this, please? Can I get some volume for this? I'm just going to go and start it again. Okay. Watch this. So he's just going over the edge here.
Holy crap!
And now he goes over the edge.
Whoa!
Look at his physiology. Okay. We are always looking for inflection points in technology, right? And this is a huge inflection point because here, virtual reality now disrupts reality. You can see the physiological disruption to his body. That virtual roller coaster can do many more interesting things than a real roller coaster. And they were doing actually very effective treatment of fear of heights, fear of water, fear of the dark using these technologies. And so this is essentially where the world is going. We've turned software, we've turned food, energy, healthcare, experience into software. Fundamentally, we turn the world around. And we need to organize for it in a very different way. The companies that can figure out how to navigate this world will do very well. But most companies will not know how to navigate this new world. So thank you very much for your time. It's been great being here. Thank you for having me. I think we have like 5 minutes. Okay. We've left about 5 minutes for questions. I wanted to take some time and see if anybody had any questions. I covered a few different areas there. So does anybody have any questions? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Spanish or English? English, okay.
Airbnb. What about peer-to-peer lending? What do you think is happening in that space?
So peer-to-peer lending, I think, is absolutely set for massive transformation. Lending Club is already a public company in the US. Remember that the bank is just a proxy for the peer-to-peer, right? That's all the bank is. It's collecting deposits. But if you can decentralize the bank, then the lending is centralized also. But however, it's not as easy as it sounds because the banks have regulatory protection. When I talk to banking CEOs, they don't like the regulators. And my answer is the regulator is your best friend. It's stopping you from being eaten alive by these startups, right? The media industry, the music industry did not have regulatory protection. They're dead. So the banks have regulatory protection. Make sure your regulator is your best friend, would be my answer. So it'll be slower to be adopted, but I think things like Bitcoin will start to disrupt it, especially in emerging markets. Half of the world's population does not have a bank account, right? And so we think Bitcoin will first be adopted by the unbanked, and we'll see new models emerging there, and then it'll reverse into the first world. A good example is in Kenya, you have the phenomena of M-Pesa, which is more than 50% of the GDP of Kenya operating on a peer-to-peer basis, okay, with no central banks involved. Other questions? Yeah, question there and then there, yeah. You can shout it out, I'll repeat it. What are the what are the chances for 3D printing to solve the housing problem? Very, very promising. There's extraordinary things happening. I think I've just lost my mic. Oh, there we go. Our favorite joke at Singularity, by the way, is artificial intelligence or AI is really easy, but AV really hard. And if you've given presentations, you'll understand that. 3D printing is actually set to do some very dramatic things because we can now do 3D printing of houses. In China, they're building about 5 houses a day using 3D printing. The cost is 1/5 of the current cost. Okay? Could I get a handheld mic because my mic keeps cutting out? Could I get a handheld mic? Thank you. If you could turn my microphone off, I'll just use this. It'll be a little easier. All right? Is that better? Can you hear me? Okay, excellent. So 3D printing is going to be quite transformative. It'll take a little longer to get there because, again, you've got regulatory housing codes and so on. But it's certainly in developing countries, rural areas, etc., like Detroit, we'll be able to use 3D printing in very interesting ways to change the world. Okay? There's a question back there. Yeah.
Okay. In Spanish.
In Spanish. Hang on. Let me get the technology out. Go ahead.
Okay.
Hang on 1 second. Have to turn it on. User error. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
En varias oportunidades pusiste el caso de Quirky como un gran caso donde es una comunidad de inventores con un gran éxito. Posteriormente, Quirky se une a General Electric. General Electric hacen un partnership y después de todo eso, Quirky se declara en quiebra.
Yeah.
¿Cómo puedes explicar cuando todos los planetas se alinean para que haya éxito y finalmente una empresa, que es la comunidad más grande de inventores, termina quebrada?
Sure. So the Quirky example is a good one. Now, there's lots of reasons startups fail, right? Quirky just failed, by the way. So Quirky is a consumer packaged goods company. They have 1 million inventors submitting ideas to them. Okay? Now, if you're a normal company like Procter & Gamble or Unilever or Johnson & Johnson, it takes about 300 days to go from a new product to a Walmart shelf. Quirky does that same process, new idea to Walmart shelf in 29 days. Okay? Unbelievable in an old industry. Quirky just failed. The reason is twofold. First, they tried to do too many products. So the CEO got excited. The first 2 products worked very well. And then he said, let's do 50. Right? And if you've built companies doing products, you know that you have to really carefully get the supply chain correct for each product before you go doing other ones, right? And so he tried too many products at the same time. And the second reason was that his distribution channel were the big box retailers like Walmart, Best Buy, etc. And they're in trouble, right? So his retail channel was disappearing at the same time he was trying too much complexity. The third reason, we actually know Ben quite well, the CEO. The third reason he failed was he created another company within the existing one called Wink, which does home connectedness, which was doing very well, but they couldn't separate that out, and the whole thing sank at the same time. So there's lots and lots of reasons that companies fail. In this case, it was unfortunately he tried to be too ambitious too quickly. Okay? And this is a big question: is when do you go for it, right? And an EXO model. Okay. Any other questions? We'll take 2 more and then we'll end. Yeah, one over here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi. Hello. You mentioned mindset being one of the biggest issues for transformation.
The biggest issue.
Okay, so my question is, do you recommend us, or in general?
How do you change mindset?
Yeah. How do you recommend us doing it?
In a big company or in an
Yeah.
existing company, yeah. So, it's one of those where if you look at big companies today, all of the management disciplines, all of the senior management, all of the education training experience comes from the 20th century. And all of our MBA programs teach us how to build companies for the 20th century. No MBA program can teach you how to build Uber or Airbnb. So that's one huge inflection point. So that means we have to completely change the management thinking in tens and tens of millions of people's heads, which is not easy. So that's why we say, don't try and take in a big existing business and turn it into one of these. It's too dramatic a change. But leave it alone, create these new things on the edge and move off that. And let me tell you a quick story. Nestle wanted to create Nespresso, right? And you're all familiar with Nespresso. Staggering success, $5 billion line of business now for Nestle. $5 billion now, $5 billion a year. Nespresso is now doing $5 billion a year of sales, right? Pretty good. But what they did was they set up a new team separate from the mothership, and they did it away from the existing product and existing businesses. Now, something to note is the entire 3 years of the existence of Nespresso and the development, the motherships, all the executives in the mothership spent all their time trying to kill it. Because they said, this is not what we do, et cetera, et cetera. We saw the same thing. I'll give you another example, which is Walmart.com. When Walmart realized they had to compete with Amazon, they said, we need to create a website and do e-commerce. The first time they tried to do it inside the mothership. Died. The immune system killed it pretty quickly. The second time they tried it, they did it outside, but they said, let's leverage the existing inventory, supply chain management, our back end. Died. Okay. Third time they tried it, they said, okay, let's keep it completely independent, and the supply chain independent. They set it up outside the mothership, and it started to succeed, and the mothership pulled it back in too quickly and killed it. Okay. And the fourth time, okay, now each time is taking 18 months with all of the churn, opportunity cost, management disruption, careers broken, etc. The fourth time they did it, they said, okay, let's do it on the outside. Let's do it separate from the mothership. Let's let it achieve its own scale independently, and only after it has achieved its own critical mass do you try and stitch the back ends together. And now it's succeeding, right? So it speaks to the fact that the management discipline is not there. We don't know. We've never had to do this before. All of our training for 50 years has been building companies for globalization, efficiency, scalability, not for this very new disruptive world. Okay? One last question, and then we'll end it for you. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you very much. Following the previous question about mindset, because you're talking about inorganically change from your core. But isn't it there's a risk that too many people get behind this exponential trend? And if it happens, too many consumers as well are going to detach from that reality. So in the end, it won't provide that many business change if you got so many consumers detached, because we all have the previous century mindset.
You mean the consumers are not adapting?
Exactly.
Okay. What we find is the consumers adapt pretty quickly, right? Like you look at the Apple products with the iPod. In 2012, I think 80% of Apple's revenues in 2012 and 2013 came from products that did not exist 5 years ago. That's an unbelievable number. And so what we find is consumer mindset. Like, how many of you have tried Uber? Can I just see your show of hands? Okay. A huge number. That's a consumer change. Think of the percentage of the fleet that Uber represents. It's almost zero, right? So there's an example. Now, that's one thing. When we see something that's better and more convenient, we'll use it, right? The second piece is the younger generation operates in a completely different way. If you're 25 years old or younger, you're natively digital in this world, and we can see with them texting nonstop, et cetera, that this is the case, right? And I'll give you a great way of thinking about this. When you have a first-year university student today has never known a world without Wikipedia. For them, the full access to the entire world's information is just there. When we grew up, I say some of us, information was scarce, right? It was a scarcity model, bound in physical encyclopedias. Now information is digital and abundant. And what we're seeing is this is just the beginning, right? Food, healthcare, energy, experience all becoming digital. And so we're going to see the biggest transformation in society in the history of the world, and the biggest change in business as a result of that. And so we're finding the younger generation actually adapts much, much more quickly to this. It's mostly we're the problem in here. Okay? All right, with that, I think we have to take a break. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you.
Los invitamos a 25 minutos de break para seguir hablando del
All right.
tema
You're
aquí en
welcome.
Colombia. Muchas gracias.
Still on.